What was the incident in your high school? Story 1. A football player with the last name Parham got punished for some stuff and was no longer allowed to walk the stage for graduation. One day, a friend of his pulled up in a truck outside of the cafeteria during lunch, slammed on the brakes, jumped out, and proceeded to sprint inside. He streaked through half the cafeteria with the Spider-Man mask on and said, "Free Parham," painted on his bare ass. Staff tried to grab him and stop him, and despite him literally slipping on a piece of food and falling, he escaped valiantly, as any hero should. Eventually, Parham was once again allowed to walk the stage, although I'm sure the stunt wasn't the only reason for it. Story 2. A girl in her final year got pregnant and was hiding it from her parents. She was 18 at the time, though. She went to a counselor, a qualified clinical psychologist, who was helping her through it. The counselor walked her through all of her options and did what she was supposed to do. The girl, I think possibly in denial, carried the baby quite far along but then wanted out. She was also starving herself. Long story short, I also can't remember all the exact details. She apparently went to a dodgy clinic where she convinced them she was much earlier in the pregnancy, guessing they did no tests, and they gave her abortion pills or something like that. Like I said, can't remember the exact deets, so don't crucify me. She started profusely bleeding in class the next day and was rushed to the hospital. The baby survived for about 4 hours and then passed away. Obviously, by this point, her parents were there. Upon questioning, she named our school counselor and said that she had forced her to have an abortion. This whole case went to court. Our poor school counselor could not say anything or defend herself publicly until the case was done. We had reporters outside our school gates for ages. It all came out in the end that the girl had lied and the counselor was completely innocent and had just done what she was supposed to do and had offered the girl all the information and advice for her to make an informed decision. I was amazed at how professional the counselor was and how she did everything by the book when it came to speaking about her client. Anyway, that was pretty crazy. Story 3. So this happened just yesterday and it was pretty wild for a Canadian school. At the end of the day, there was a police car at the front of the school. Someone said they saw a kid get arrested when they went to the washroom. Anyway, at the end of the day, a cop and the principal were standing at both back passenger windows talking to someone inside. We all just assumed that someone was getting arrested for selling drugs or something. The next day, my homeroom teacher told us between 3rd and 4th period, the 2 afternoon periods in Canada, a former student who was about 20 years old blended in with students and snuck into the school hallways. He wandered through the hallways, stealing from unlocked lockers, and actually stole about 10 laptops from teachers' classrooms somehow. They ended up catching him at the Tim Hortons down the road. Not sure what's going to happen to him, but someone said his mom was his getaway vehicle a couple of blocks down the road. He just had to stop at Timmy's first. Only in Canada do people have to stop for a coffee and a donut mid-robbery. Story 4. High School 1. Jostens, they make rings and yearbooks, was on campus to sell us our class rings. They had a Chicago Bears Super Bowl ring along with other famous rings they made. Somebody stole the Super Bowl ring. We were all called into an assembly to find the ring. The Jostens guy was close to tears. The ring was found in the hallway after the assembly was let out. High School 2. A couple girls got in a fight at the bus stop. One of them cut the other with a box cutter and then tossed battery acid on her. Story 5. At my high school, seniors had to do a senior project. Could be anything really, just plan it out and follow through. A very popular and well-liked senior made an end-of-day announcement that tomorrow morning he'd be in the student parking lot working on it and needed as many other folks there as possible. The next day, he drives into the student parking lot and sets up a tripod and a camera. A large crowd gathered around just about 30 minutes before the first bell. He hit record, thanks everyone for showing up, then he reaches into his car, pulls out a handgun, and kills himself before anyone could react. No one knows why. He was a great guy with a bright future. Never know what struggles others are going through, though. I think about it frequently and take that into consideration to try and just be nice to others with random acts of kindness. Story 6. I didn't transfer in until after it happened, but I had a classmate who was in the room when it did happen. In our 9th grade year, 1989 to 1990, one of the guys in the theater and drama class had been threatening suicide and hurting friends and classmates. She and all her friends went to the teachers and principal but were told they could do nothing because he had no history and therefore he had to do something first. He did. Walked in mid-class, took the entire room including my friend and her friends who had reported his threats hostage, brandished the gun around repeatedly, then shot one of their mutual friends who was trying to talk him down. Kid lost his ear but not his life, thankfully. She was still giving legal depositions 2 years later when I met her, which is how I heard the story. Story 7. The guy takes massive poop off the top floor of a massive stairwell. In the same stairwell, someone drops a pressurized can of soda, cracking open a teacher's skull. Someone brought in a decommissioned World War I authentic stick grenade. The entire school was evacuated onto 1 yard for 4 hours while the bomb squad was on their way. Our school counselor, who took kids out of lessons to help with low self-esteem, committed suicide. And that one's a bit sad, to be honest. A drama teacher got arrested for convincing two 14-year-old students to have sex while he watched, and he still works there. And a music teacher got sacked for coming in drunk. Twice. I love lower-class Britain. Story 8. Oh man. One time, this kid I was friends with brought this hot sauce called The Bomb, 1.5 million Scoville units, hotter than hell, to high school and let a bunch of kids try it during lunch. I mean, at least 30 kids. Some kids really started freaking out because that sauce is ridiculously hot, like you're supposed to add 1 or 2 drops to a big batch of chili to make it spicy. Some were trying to show off and took a swig of it and ended up vomiting everywhere from the heat and panic. Multiple kids had to go to the nurse and be sent home because of the way they overdid it, although I think most just really had no idea what a Scoville unit was or that they made hot sauce that was that ridiculously hot. It was chaos. I tried it as well, a dime-sized amount, and I couldn't concentrate on anything but chugging milk. And I'm really good with spicy foods. Finally, the principal came on the intercom and said, "Whoever brought the hot sauce, please just stop." My friend got into some pretty big trouble for that one. Story 9. There had been rumors since my freshman year about the assistant principal taking a certain special interest in a few of the girls. Almost everyone wrote it off as high school kids starting stupid rumors, until my senior year, when 4 police officers came in after school and walked him out in cuffs in front of a few hundred students watching a basketball game against another school. He was hooking up with one of the girls in my grade and selling her oxycodone in the hallways. Got 10 years. Story 10. Senior year, we received our yearbooks the week of graduation, and to our surprise, a full-page action shot for men's soccer showcased our player jumping up and lifting one leg to trap and control the ball. Unfortunately, he forgot to wear underwear that game, and the tip of his wiener was fully visible sticking out of the bottom of his shorts. Our school had over 4,000 students, and we were all required to bring our yearbook into security to have the sharpied over, or we wouldn't be able to walk at graduation. Story 11. It was the last day for the senior class. There were only 2 significant pranks that day, too. The principal's office was filled with balloons and glitter, and the main hallway entrance was saran-wrapped. About an hour before the day ended, the principal came over the loudspeaker and said that anyone caught participating in a prank would not walk at the graduation ceremony. About a minute after he said this, the fire alarm went off. A guy who was near the principal said that he got angry and said out loud, "Someone's not walking," before storming off. An entire wing of the school was hazy and smoke was pouring out of a classroom. Turns out the science teacher was doing a laser experiment for his class and created too much smoke with the smoke machine. Story 12. This was back in the 70s. In 7th grade, some girl just started groping the boys. If you got close to her, she would immediately grab your groin or butt, whichever was closer. Sometimes she would grab both at the same time. Of course, the boys started groping her back, and it turned into a common thing to do, and she let it happen. The boys then started groping other girls, and some went along with it and thought it was funny. Others got upset and told teachers and the principal. The principal called the big assembly and read the riot act. The girl that started it all acted shocked and outraged, but the adults knew she was the one that started the whole thing. Her little brother was strange as well. The girl in question didn't go to high school with us. I asked some of her friends about her, and they said she ended up getting pregnant the summer after 8th grade and was going to some other school that was for girls only, I think. Maybe a special school for teenage girls that had gotten pregnant. It's pretty fuzzy all these years later. The father was a boy who was 2 years older than us and as an adult was in and out of prison. Last I heard about her was that she was working as a desk clerk at a motel or hotel near where we grew up, Northern California, but that would have been in the 90s. She may have worked as a stripper in San Francisco in the 80s, but the sources I got from that were a little less reliable. Other things I'm starting to remember, if she could, your clothes were loose enough, she would jam her hands down your pants so her hand would be making direct contact with your penis. This wasn't as common though, mostly it was through the clothes. When a boy jammed his hands down her pants, she would just stand there with a weird grin on her face and a faraway look in her eyes. She also stopped groping the boys much once the boys started groping her like that was the end result she wanted all along. Thinking back, I wonder how the adults who ran the school were clueless up until the point that other girls started complaining about getting groped. She was also the one that used to bring Playboys, penthouses, and Playgirls to school when those magazines were everywhere. She kept them in her locker, and during lunch, she would get them out and other kids would look at them. I don't think anyone ever got caught for that. The teachers must have noticed other kids gathering around her locker, but I don't think they ever investigated. Story 13. During one of the semi-formal dances of the year, not prom, some school officials thought it would be a great idea to screen the underwear choices of the girls attending for morality purposes because thongs were of the devil. Their great plan for implementation was to literally pull girls aside from the ticket line and just lift up their skirts. Right there, no curtain, no other room, nothing, just right in front of the gym doors, while everybody else was in line able to see. This was a New York Times quote. Said one parent called her to report that a teacher had pulled a girl's top to see if she was wearing a bra. The baseball team gained notoriety after freshman entrance to their team with a broomstick during hazing. And then there was the lore. Why can't seniors leave campus for lunch? Seniors with cars used to be able to leave to get fast food. This was discontinued because some jackasses went to the local daycare center up the hill, like a 15-minute walk away, and started flashing their genitals at the children. Story 14. Had a teacher get involved with several girls in high school. He pretty much had one in each grade. At first, it was just rumored, and then hit the fan and the principal confirmed what was going on when the guy was fired. He was married and had a small child and was leaving his family for a 15-year-old girl. Months after he got fired, the girl went missing, and she was found dead several days later with signs of violence. A day later, his body was found in another city about 150 miles away. Someone put a knife through his neck. No one ever knew what really happened, but theories are abundant. I'm Hispanic, and honor killings are not really a thing in my country, but the father getting them killed was a theory floated around by people that knew her, mostly us high schoolers. Might have been the wife that orchestrated it, but no evidence supports that theory. If I remember correctly, from what the police could gather, after the girl went missing, the teacher went on the run and even asked a friend of his for help. The friend went to jail for helping him out before the girl was even found, and by then he was by himself. The girl was probably dead already at that point. This was mid-2000s, so I'm not sure I can find articles online about it, and if I do, they're in Spanish. Story 15. I was a teacher, and a very good kid just got pushed to his limit by a bully teacher. Had been bullied by this guy for a couple of years. Never did find out what was up with that. So the bully teacher says something to the kid, and he runs out to his car and grabs a crowbar and comes in smashing all the glass he encountered. It was safety glass, but lots of shards anyway. Tries to go after the teacher to kill him. He gets trapped in the library. The classroom was located in a small classroom off the library, and it was right next door, keeping kids in their seats and unable to go to the bathroom for about 90 minutes. Cops began arriving from all directions since we were right off two state highways. State cops, canine cops, etc. The kid destroyed all the beautiful 1940s oak shelving, the teacher's desks, and anything that would break. His mom shows up and disarms him. The kid gets slammed on a stretcher and hauled off to the nearby Air Force Base where his dad worked. Not sure exactly what happened there, but he got a lifetime ban from being at the high school and a serious restraining order from ever contacting or being near the bully teacher. I like the kid, never had a tiny bit of trouble with him. Saw him a couple of months later and asked him to please tell me if he was ever mad at me. He laughed. The kid was diagnosed with intermittent explosive disorder, went on to be a good adult. He just kind of lost it that day. I did not know that the kid was being bullied until it hit the fan. Then kids told me the whole story. There was nothing I could do except offer words of support to his girlfriend and then be nice to him when I saw him again. As a victim of lifetime bullying, not school but family, I know the damage it can cause. As far as bullies go, I called them out in my classroom whenever I knew what was going on. But if you know anything about bullies, they tend to do these things at times and places that teachers don't see. We can't stop what we don't witness. And sadly, many or most victims do not report it until the situation has reached critical mass. Story 16. The kid in the year above decided mid-ICT lesson that he needed to drop the kids off. The teacher wouldn't let him go, so he decided to move to the back of the classroom and proceeded to poop in an empty Pringles can. After dropping the log, he went around offering out Pringles to people. One kid stuck his hand in blind and got a handful of poop. The kid was unsurprisingly pissed off and threw the handful of poop at the kid who had the can. There was a whole fight and poop was thrown over the whole room. It all had to be industrially cleaned too, and even after that, it still stank in there. It was pretty grim. Story 17. Elementary school. First grade teacher died and was replaced with a substitute for the rest of the year. She passed in her sleep. Our old band teacher was recently arrested for being a pedophile. Found out at homecoming when a friend told me. It was wild. Middle school. I remember 4 suicides from my middle school alone. The high school had many more. A couple of kids got pregnant. Someone would sneak into the bathrooms before school and started and pooped, removed it from the toilet with gloves and tossed it on the ceiling where it would stick. Happened 3 times before the kid was caught. Multiple lockdowns for bomb and shooting threats. In high school, 3 fentanyl overdoses at a nearby high school, all resulting in death. That was this year. Crazy enough, not a lot has happened in high school besides the fentanyl things. Pretty chill so far. Story 18. Oh, I have a few. A girl scratched a guy's face so hard he got a scar that runs from his forehead to his cheekbone, passing through the eye, almost blinding him because she felt like kicking his ass. A kid was caught smoking weed in the bathroom several times because his mother found out he smoked and prohibited him from leaving school during class hours so he couldn't come out and smoke. On Monday, we arrived at the school to find a huge puddle of puke on the floor of the main hall. The Students' Association threw a party the night before and nobody cleaned it because they were all either drunk or stoned. After that, no more parties could be hosted at school. They were all hosted at event pavilions outside of the school grounds. A girl, 16, got pregnant. When confronted by her parents, she spilled all the beans. She and her boyfriend would wait until almost closing hours and have sex at secluded corners of the school grounds. When she gave birth, the father dragged the boyfriend to the hospital nursery, placed the baby in his arms and said, "This is yours. Deal with it." A really weird teacher was caught watching porn. His students turned the projector on in the middle of a test to mess with him and found out. Story 19. Our school had a skiing trip and it was open to years 10 through 13, so in the UK, that's around ages 14 to 18. During one night, a few of the year 13s decided to play a prank and one of the 18-year-olds teabags another boy who was asleep. The boy was only 15 and was bullied relentlessly for the rest of the skiing trip. When he got home and was understandably upset, he told his parents and they lost it. Immediately went to the school and got the police involved who decided to investigate it as sexual assault on a minor. The school went into a panic and gathered everyone from the skiing trip before the police arrived and told them that the incident didn't happen, although knowing full well it did happen. They decided to help the 18-year-old out so as not to ruin the rest of his life over a prank. The school did a pretty good job convincing the students it didn't happen and the police bought it was just rumored. The 15-year-old was happy as he was no longer bullied as everyone now believed it wasn't true and the 18-year-old avoided prison. But yeah, the school technically covered up sexual assault on a minor. Story 20. During my sophomore year of high school, I was on spring break with my family and we went out of state to a condo for the week. Great trip. I recommend Virginia to anyone looking for a scenic getaway. When we got back from that vacation and went to school the next Monday, everyone was staring at me like they saw a ghost. I was an introvert in a public school of about 1,200 kids, so it was pretty unnerving. I had girls and guys running up and hugging me saying they were so glad I was okay, and many of them I didn't even really talk to. I was so confused. Coming to find out, in the next town over, there was a kid who was struck by a car and killed while we were gone on spring break. His name was identical to mine except for one letter in his last name, so everyone who saw it naturally assumed they spelled the name wrong because that spelling was a very common mistake with my name. I wouldn't call it the incident for my school, but that day was pretty memorable and I had to share it when I saw your similar story. Story 21. Oh my God, there's so many. Too many. My elementary and middle schools located on the same campus were in really bad neighborhoods. By the time I was done with middle school, I had seen some pretty rough stuff. There was a suspicious package dropped off at my elementary school the year after I graduated. The entire elementary school, 600 kids, was evacuated and then crammed into the gym of the middle school next door, which I attended. Turns out the package was not a bomb, though I don't think the public ever found out what was really inside. The school was placed on heightened alert during my 5th grade year, not a full lockdown, but students weren't allowed to leave the building. Naturally, this happened right at dismissal, so the head principals were rushing everybody back in as quickly as they could. I was at the front door, which made it even more terrifying. Turns out there was a teenager on campus with a gun, unloaded, and after that, my school was placed on heightened alert dozens of times, but it was never super dramatic since they normally didn't tell the kids. The news never found out, but the middle school gym teacher once held soccer practice and separated the black and the white kids and then made them play each other. Me and a few other students were actually the ones who reported it, and he got into big trouble, but he was never fired and he's still there. In fact, he's trying to become a vice principal right now. High school next door made national news for having 3 guns on campus in the span of 2 months. Now every high school in the district has metal detectors. You might have seen this one on CNN as it only happened a few months ago. A special ed teacher at my middle school dragged an autistic kid down the hallway, causing him to have bruises on his arms and legs. It was insane because I actually know the teacher who did it, and it was very bizarre to watch the news clip because I had been in that hallway dozens of times. Not at my elementary school, but at a friend's. A teacher was arrested for having sexual relations with a student at the elementary school, not at a high school, but at an elementary school. And the final incident, at my elementary school, different from any of the previous ones I mentioned, the principal's husband was arrested after stealing several bourbon barrels. It was a massive heist. The principal never got into any trouble, but most parents are pretty sure she likely knew about the 4 bourbon barrels that were just sitting in her basement.